Can I call the meeting to order, please? Okay. We have, first item, I believe, public comments. Are there anybody for public speakers? Okay. Approval of minutes that are in your book. Can I have a motion, please? Second? In favor?
Aye.
Thank you. The work plan is in the book. Is there any comment that anybody wants to entertain on the
Jay, I wanted to take a minute on the work plan to speak about today. So I wanted to raise with the committee 3 changes that are relevant to today's discussion. The first is that we moved up from later in the year the LIRR infrastructure report because it seemed to us it was good as we move forward to look at strategic linkages. So since Metro North's infrastructure report was going to be happening today, we moved Long Island's to coincide with that. And as part of that report, we're going to lead with a presentation of PTC, positive train control. The next thing that's notable about the change in today is we've moved out the rolling stock discussion that would have typically happened today. The reason for doing that is, frankly, that it needs to be part of a strategic discussion that links the rolling stock purchases to many analytic issues, some of which Jay has mentioned in the past, such as useful life discussion and whether we're getting the value for the money we're spending. The railroads are proposing in the next plan to do some early retirements, so we want to have a strategic discussion on that. We want to talk about the consistency and effectiveness of the 2 railroad RCM, reliability-centered maintenance programs. We want to talk about opportunities that we have in the joint M9 procurement. And we also want to talk about opportunities relative to facilities and maximizing our investments in facilities. So in that regard, we would talk about the Morris Park facility as well as opportunities that Harmon might propose. So we have some work to do, and what we've done is we've moved that discussion to April, and it will be a discussion on rolling stock and its related assets. In a similar vein, while we haven't done it yet, I think we're going to look to make changes to the work plan that look at opportunities to look across the agency more, compare productivity and value that we're getting from each of our agencies and opportunities to do things more consistently and in more of a shared approach to save money. So that's other changes to the work plan you can expect to be coming over the next few months. And the final change to the work plan is we've just added a presentation that will be done by Mike Gardner and Ron on the small business mentoring program. This is a program that we believe legislation will be passed for shortly, and we want to tell you about the steps that we're taking to be prepared for that. So that's basically the changes to the work plan, are changes that you'll see today, with future ones coming, and we'll talk to you more about those as we get further along. And if you have thoughts about what you'd like to see us doing as we move to change the work plan, please don't hesitate to let me know.
I think from my perspective, as Linda and I have gotten into this, it seems to me that we as a committee should actually be getting into some of the more critical strategic issues for the organization, and that the way in which we were approaching it wasn't necessarily facilitating that discussion. So the objective here is really to be able to bring it together in a way that does facilitate that discussion. And now is the absolute right time to be doing it. We're at the start of a new capital program. There's a lot of issues on the table that are coming from this. And I've actually been very pleased, by the way, from the response from all the agencies about how to be able to do this. So I think over the course of this year, I hope that we'll actually change the discussion we're having at this table. We should always still have a discussion in which there's an element of it that's oversight over our ongoing capital projects, but oversight also reflects the strategy that we're carrying forth, because that drives so much of the investment that we're making. So that's really the intent that we're trying to work to in doing this, and I think Linda and her team have moved quickly to try to respond to that. So. You also now have at your seats, I think, a new report on commitments and completions, which I think Greg is going to speak to. But it's another example of us trying to move quickly to be able to give us a different, hopefully a better way of understanding what's actually happening with our capital program and looking at the analytical basis of it. Linda and I have been discussing it even just an hour ago, and I think clearly there are some things that we can continue to do with it, but it's now pointed in a direction that I hope is giving us the type of information that we should have, and I think it'd be helpful to let Greg just take us through that for a couple of moments just to see how we're doing. And again, don't hesitate to offer suggestions about it. So Greg, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thanks very much. As Jay noted, we have been modifying the report a little bit. The report that you have in front of you now tries to summarize the highlights of the year's events in a few pages at the front, and then puts most of the details into the back of the report. I'd like you to turn your attention first to page 2.4, which is a summary of the year's commitment performance. If you look over in the first column at the bottom there, overall the MTA committed about 70% of the budgeted value of its plan. That shortfall, the 30% shortfall, there is mostly a result of slippages in the New York City Transit program, as well as the projects related to East Side Access and Second Avenue, mostly real estate, for the Capital Company program. The actual value of those commitments is 75% of the plan, and that is a result of high bids for projects for the Capital Company, East Side Access, mostly the Queens Softball Tunnel, as well as projects added during the year that weren't part of the original plan. This reflects one of the changes that we're doing in the program to report on both the budgeted value commitments, which actually measures performance, as opposed to the actual value commitments, where performance can be distorted by high bids.
In other words, to try it slightly different, we should be concerned as you look at page 2.4 that we have spent more money in doing this than we had budgeted to do the work. We tend, in the way that we do our analysis, to wash that out because the whatever we spend gets counted as a commitment, and so it washes that out. But really, part of what we should be focusing on is we accomplished work that we had budgeted 4350 to do, and unfortunately we accomplished it, or we committed it at a price of 4.7 to be able to do it. And obviously we cannot continue over time to always spend $350 million more than we have to be able to do it. That 350 has to come out of somewhere, right? We haven't had any way in which we've been focusing on that, in which we've been saying if we set up something and said it's going to cost us $100, did we do it for $100? In fact, in many ways, if we did it for 110, it would look better in our reports, which is ironic, but just the way that it would be. So I think we're still cleaning the format a little bit about this, but the message of it is we need to be committing our work, but we also need to be committing our work within the basis in which we're doing it. And as you look at this, you do see some places where we are bringing in work for less than the expected amount. So we've had a shortfall in the transit side, but the transit side, for what we have committed, is actually right now coming in under what we had budgeted to be able to do it. That's how you should read this, and I don't think it's coming across as clearly yet, but it's the right approach, Greg. I think it's really what we're trying to do.
Okay, so flip one page to page 2-5. This details out some of the performance a little better by agency. If you glance through that page, the two groupings, a number that sort of jump out at you are the slippage for the New York City Transit of about $1.3 billion. Most of that is made up, as I indicated earlier, by planned commitments that were not made by the end of the year. The two biggest chunks of those are the Flushing CPTC project, which is probably $500-600 million of that, and then the Clara Hale Depot, which is about $300 million of that. High bids, low bids, and projects added and scope change don't reflect a large part of that delta. If you flip over about 3 columns to MTA Capital Company, the numbers that jump out there are a reflection of why they were so close to their plan. High bids represent about $300 million of that. Once again, that's for the soft-bore tunnels. And projects added about $280 million, which represents some work on Fulton Street plus the 50th Street vent plant for east side access. Those were projects that were not in the original commitment plan. Okay. Don't do this? Okay. Can you flip a couple more pages forward from there? You get to the completions page. For the full year of 2009, the MTA completed about $4.2 billion, or 83% of the plan. As with commitments, New York City Transit and the Capital Company experienced the most slippage. New York City Transit completed about 85% of the plan. The details of that are in the appendix, page 2-15. And Capital Company completed about 58% of its plan, due largely to slippage of the Peter Minuet Plaza and various security projects. And that's the summary of the commitments and completions. The details, again, are in the appendix, and we can follow up with any questions or any further analysis that you want.
Greg, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, sure.
So as I look at the completions part, for Long Island Railroad, we had a 2009 plan of 340. We did 399. Am I looking at that saying that we completed work ahead of schedule, which would be great, and therefore that's the difference of the 59? Or am I looking at it that we spent $59 million more to do the work than we had anticipated?
I'm not dead certain of the answer to that. I would guess it's accelerated completions, but I would need to follow up on that.
Because again, that's the type
Another
of
issue, right.
And that's the type of distinction that I think we should be clear about. You know, and again, I hope it's that we did more work. I just don't know. I mean,
I understand it's the viaduct project that came in early.
terrific. Terrific. Thanks. Okay. Any questions on that? Thoughts, suggestions? Okay. The next item here, is the example of something that is of significance to the organization. I've been engaged in a discussion pretty much from the day I walked in the door with both Long Island and Metro North on positive train control, which is a federal mandate that we're dealing with. And again, I think both Long Island and Metro North felt that it was important to update the committee. I agree with them because it has real implications for us on a going forward basis. So Al Cosenza and John Kennard have been, among others, have been working to do this together. It is, I would say, quite clearly an area of joint activity between the railroads, which I applaud them for. And I think Helene and Howard have also been working very closely to try to do this as a joint program, although there are differences between the railroads and the implications for the two railroads may differ a little bit. Gentlemen.
Okay, I'll walk you through the presentation, and we'll take any questions, I guess, afterwards or as it works for you. On September 13th of 2008, there was a collision in Los Angeles of a Metrolink commuter train and a freight train as well that resulted in, unfortunately, the death of 25 people. And soon thereafter, I'd say legislation that had been in discussion in Washington for probably a number of years was enacted in the form of the Rail Safety Improvement Act of 2008. As Jay noted, it's a mandate, a federal mandate, deals with all properties in the United States, not just the MTA properties. The Act requires the installation of positive train control, and we'll kind of walk through that a little bit as we go through the presentation. Also set a very aggressive time frame. April of 2010, this spring, both railroads have to submit what's called a PTC implementation plan, laying out how we'll meet the federal deadline, the deadline being December 2015. There's no differentiation between any properties really in this time frame. One of the differentiations we have, both the commuter rails have, is we actually have a cab signal system, which gives us a greater degree of protection than other railroads, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well today. On January 15th, so just very recently, the FRA sent out the final rule for publication. They were required to do that. The railroads may petition to make changes to that final rule in a 60-day period. However, in our discussions with FRA, it's our belief that their flexibility is somewhat limited and if we want to make any changes, it may have to be through a legislative process. And we have been in that. I think, as Jay may have mentioned, both Helena Williams and Howard Permit, as well as Chris Boylan, have had a number of discussions on this to try to potentially work towards that. The costs are significant for Metro North and Long Island Railroads, in excess of $750 million. There's some portion of that is the state of Connecticut's responsibility, about 75, but it's still a big MTA obligation. There are significant risks and challenges to meet the deadline, funding obviously being one of them. What positive train control is designed to prevent is train-to-train collisions, overspeed derailments, incursions into work zones, basically trying to protect roadway workers, and then movements of trains through a switch in the wrong position. So trying to basically to increase safeguard, I'd say, over some of these systems in place now. There's no PTC systems right now in high-density commuter operations. Amtrak does have something, which you see in the next bullet. The design that we're going to progress is based on Amtrak's Access 2 design, which is in place in some places on Northeast Corridor. It's an overlay to a cab signal system. FRA has indicated to us that it will be grandfathered, and that we believe that it offers us really the only realistic way to meet the 2015 timeframe. If we had to start from scratch or try to do other things, it would be very, very difficult to do.
Can you go back 1 second?
Sure.
Are there any existing PTC systems in operation?
Yes, I would say, and others can help me, but on the Northeast Corridor, the Access 2 PTC system is in place in various parts of the corridor, so they are in place. Are there any other places?
I was going to ask, is there any place other than Amtrak?
Amtrak has a ITCS system out in Michigan. I know that doesn't answer your question, but in terms of commuter rail, those are the only two, the corridor and Michigan.
So the other systems that are like ours, although nobody's like ours, but the other systems that are commuter-oriented, Washington, San Francisco, Boston, Chicago, nobody has PTC.
We're all in the same.
We're all
the
together.
same- yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
I think you should differentiate in some of what you're saying. Remember, this is for railroads, not
Right.
for properties that are regulated as transit properties. So Washington Metro, for example, I do not believe would be picked
Included?
up included in this. This
That's
is
correct.
for railroads.
If I may, Mitch, the other important difference is most commuter railroads do not have cab signaling ATC. So there's a significant... As we do. There's a
Right.
significant
Okay.
difference between Metro North Long Island and the Northeast Corridor railroads and all the other commuter railroads in the United States.
But at the moment, the legislation, other than the grandfathering, treats everybody the same. At the moment.
That is correct.
Okay.
As well as the Class 1.
Right.
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 We're running the gamut from smaller, we're looking at this from our end perspective to the other end perspective being smaller railroads and freight operations in the middle of Iowa,
Right. Okay. Sorry for, okay.
There's roughly 3 to 4% of the country's railroads have cab signal. The rest of it follows pretty much the freight railroad type of operation, manual block.
And the Metro link where the accident occurred did not have cab signals?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, on the next page, there are two very large major issues, and then there's some risks that affect those issues as well. Obviously, the cost is very significant. It'll be a challenge for both of the railroads to meet that within constrained finances, within the 2010 to 14 capital program, and obviously within the legislative time frame. Obviously, if we were able to span perhaps two capital programs, it might be easier to do. It'll be a very big challenge, obviously, for us to do that. The board last year authorized the railroads to look into a loan program that FRA has to help potentially fund this mandate. Obviously, there'd be an impact on the operating budget for the debt service. We are looking into that. We've had discussions with FRA on that program. The time frame, obviously, very aggressive. Final design we have to commence final design this year. There's really inadequate time to really look at the alternatives. We believe that Access 2 gives us the best shot at it, but in the course of business, we might look at other alternatives. That's really not a luxury that we can afford to do, so we have to very quickly move into design.
Excuse me.
Sure.
You say that the cost is significant?
Yes.
How do you define significant?
It's $750 million for both railroads. About 75 of that is the state of Connecticut's obligation. So within the capital programs of the railroad, our proposed 2010 was about 1.8 billion. Long Island's was probably 2.5. That's a big number for us to have to get underneath that goal.
Alan, the other thing is that we believe there'll be significant operating costs to maintain this system. This is a whole new system overlaid on our system, so there will be operating impacts as well as the capital that John mentioned.
On the next page is some of the risks that actually can impact that as well, and some of the things that Howard just talked to. We believe that there will be a customer service impact, may impact the on-time performance and capacity of the railroads. There will be an operating budget impacts. We don't know right now. Obviously we're in the early phase of putting an implementation plan together. We have to move into design, so we don't know that, but we believe they will be significant. There are business and marketplace limitations which will affect the time frame challenge, limited pool of people. Because it's a nationwide mandate, every property will probably be going after very similar integrators and suppliers to meet the mandate, so that will obviously cause us competition, may impact pricing. Communication and data radio, a lot of this is through communication systems. Metro North and Long Island Railroad don't have adequate radio spectrum, don't have adequate frequency on their properties, and are looking to acquire that spectrum right now. We've been in that process probably for about 3 or 4 months. The acquisition of that will obviously have a cost to it, but will also, the longer it takes us to get that, impacts us, causes the time frame to become more of a challenge. We have to work on interoperability with the freight operators and Amtrak, where they operate on our system or we operate on their system. That will also be a challenge between the two for both the properties. We're looking at all these risks and trying to mitigate them as best we can. We're in the very early stages of the project. We're trying to reduce the costs, obviously. We're trying to meet the time frame and then mitigate the risks. What the railroads have done is we've really attacked this as a joint project starting last summer. We are utilizing project teams, dedicated in-house people, third-party resources with expertise in the different areas of it. We have consultant teams with a common program director. I would say that in addition to, I'd say, Jay, there's the highest level in both organizations are very focused on this effort. I mean, Howard and Helena have been very involved, so it's clearly got a lot of attention due to the cost and the time frame challenges. We're looking at the next step and trying to design these things with as much commonality as possible, so that when we get to the point of procuring things, we're procuring things that are as common to both railroads as possible, so we can keep lower inventories, lower costs, things like that. We are looking in the process of coordination with many railroads, with FRA, with Amtrak, with the state of Connecticut, New Jersey Transit, SEPTA, et cetera. We've been working with APTA, trying to coordinate as much as possible as we can to try to mitigate the risks that we see in the project. The next steps for us, I think, right now are, again, we're in the early stages. We have to do an implementation plan in April. We've undertaken a major effort in Washington with federal agencies and legislators, basically to educate them on the challenges that the MTA railroads are facing in funding and time frame, et cetera. What you see here on this last bullet, last dash here, is that 65% of the Long Island Railroad system is governed by cab signal, 82% is by Metro North. So we've got a very unique system that gives us a higher degree of safety, and we're looking, I'd say, to educate people on the benefit of that system. We're also looking at the efforts in Washington are sort of focusing on that, as well as looking to get funding. It's because it's such a significant amount of money, we're looking for perhaps some funding assistance. Radio spectrum, which I talked about very briefly, we're looking to work with FCC and legislators to try to get that freed up for the railroad's use, and just trying to focus on getting ourselves dealing with any of these risks and moving forward into implementation. And at that, we'll take any of your questions.
I want to make sure I'm synthesizing all of this correctly. There's a terrible accident, and there was a well-intentioned but knee-jerk reaction to it that didn't necessarily take into account the fact that we may have a system that may be a little more foolproof than other systems. What are the costs, and is it possible to get us up to 100% of a cab signal system on each of the railroads? What's the cost of that and the time frame of that? And how are we going to use our congressional delegation to persuade these folks that we should somehow be grandfathered from this, or that we have a viable?
Let me ask Doreen and share with you a little bit of the dialogue, because we've been in Washington a number of times talking about this. I think the approach we have taken has been to basically, first with the FRA, to have a series of conversations about cab signaling and what the benefit is of cab signaling towards why that makes us different than most of the railroads in the country, and that agreeing that positive train control provides some incremental benefit. There is some incremental benefit. That's important to say. It's not as if there's none, but that pointing out that the cost of this incremental benefit is extremely high.
Can you give me a for instance of what this incremental benefit is?
Okay, as one example is, and we should be clear, positive train control is not a fail-safe system. So one benefit is, and this is one that is kind of one of the more critical ones, is that on the railroads, when you get a red signal, a cab signal, it becomes a red signal, an engineer can bring the train, it has to bring it down to restricted speed, but then he can keep going, which on Metro North is 15. I think it's 15 on Long Island, too. I'm not sure. 15. On a positive train control system, you have to stop. At an interlocking, you'd have to stop. Now, I want to point out that two key things is that between interlockings, positive train control doesn't do anything. So you can still have a train collision between interlockings that are typically 5 to 6 miles apart. The second thing that's important is that because of the complexity of the major terminals, Grand Central, Penn, potentially Jamaica, Stamford, we believe we will get a waiver from putting in positive train control because it's so complicated, because there's so many moves being made. So where many of these types of incidents where an engineer passes a stop signal, where they happen, will not be affected by positive train control. It will be a subset. So the dialogue in Washington has been, in the first instance with FRA, and they feel their hands are very limited by the legislation, which was very specific. And so they feel there's very little they can do within their regulations to accommodate cab signaling. And that's a little bit unique with FRA regulations, but given the nature of the law, they feel that there's nothing they can do. And we've looked at it, and I think that everyone shares that view. With the legislative folks, what we have been talking about with them has been, given our circumstances different, and we've also, by the way, brought in other commuter railroads like SEPTA, who are in the same circumstance in Philadelphia, as well as some of the folks out from Indiana. And so we're talking to the other railroads as well, saying, look, we're in a different circumstance, and that we feel that there should be consideration given to that circumstance. There are a lot of ways that consideration, what exactly they could do. They are in the midst of, we were there last, when was it, Wednesday or Thursday? I can't remember.
It was the day after Massachusetts, so it was Wednesday.
Okay. Right, and so they were,
You were wearing black.
yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was a strange mood down there. But
Depending on your point of view.
right, so they are, Doreen, they're in the midst of the dialogue right now to see what can be done. Now, in addition to all of that, we are looking at the critical places they can help are obviously funding, and this is clearly an unfunded mandate. Timing, I mean, John went through that, and we think there's potential savings. There are a number of savings. We had a longer time frame. And also we have issues with the FCC, and to get help with them to get radio spectrum. So there are other places we're looking for some assistance as well. So that's generally been the approach in Washington and what we've been looking for.
I just want to add one comment in that Howard, I think that was just a great summary, of what we've been trying to achieve. But I want to make sure I don't leave you with the impression that I think we will have any success in defining cab signaling as an acceptable form of positive train control. Institutionally, the FRA has been seeking positive train control as part of their institutional program for safety for many years. They look at Chatsworth, as the Metrolink accident in October 2008 is just another negative on their safety record. They go back to a Chase, Maryland accident in 1987. I mean, they have been long proposing, a system of being able to stop the train, without the need for human intervention. They want it in the signaling circuit system. So institutionally, while FRA, I think, recognizes that it's a very compressed time frame in which to comply and that it may require us to make difficult choices that we might not otherwise make if we had more time, I think institutionally FRA will continue to support positive train control with Congress. What we need to do is get FRA to at least support more time so you can make a better effort at complying, one that is, next generation technology, not last year's technology, last decade technology, which is the problem with access to.
Doreen also asked the question about the areas in our systems which are not governed by automatic train control at the moment.
Well, let me speak to Metro North. Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot that part.
Yeah.
So on Metro North, what we will do is we have a project now funded by the state of Connecticut that will provide cab signaling ATC on the Danbury branch. Once that is done, the only part of the Metro North east of Hudson system that will not have cab signal ATC is the Waterbury branch in Connecticut, and that has such limited service that we believe we'll be able to get an exemption from the FRA for PTC for that line because it runs every 2 or 3 hours. West of Hudson, the Pascack Valley line has cab signal. The Port Jervis line does not. And we are in discussion with New Jersey Transit about that because what we do there is driven by what they're doing in the rest of the state. So we would anticipate moving towards a cab signal system west of Hudson as well, if the funding is there. If that's the case, we would then it would be almost a whole system with just the exception of Waterbury branch.
Long Island Railroad, as you can see, has significantly less territory covered by cab signaling than Metro North. We have territory that is dark territory, no signal system. It operates on operational train orders, and that is diesel territory, generally, way out east on the North Fork and South Fork. We also have areas that are automatic block signaling, which is a more limited form of signaling by black, and we have some manual block signaling as well. One of the challenges for us is that the positive train control system that's been accepted by the FRA, the one being utilized by Amtrak Access 2, is an overlay system. So the question becomes, what are we overlaying that system on if we are in dark territory? So we'd have to develop a system of signal logic, some level of signalization, and then talk about what the overlay is. There are some exemptions that the regulatory framework permits. We're still examining that, and we're examining where that would make sense for us. So we're continuing to develop that information as to what steps we would go through to institute a system of signal logic in which you can then overlay PTC.
If Howard is talking about getting an exemption for the Waterbury line, what is the likelihood then of Long Island getting an exemption for some of the East End lines, since I assume the service components are basically the same?
The level of service that we offer in Greenport today, for example, would require us to bring in PTC. the level of service we would offer after a service reduction package was adopted, for example, would probably qualify for an exemption. So that has actually been part of our
That wasn't the answer I wanted, but I understand the answer.
so you there may
What was that?
you may understand
The
some
good
of
lawyer
our
never asks the question he doesn't know the answer to. I screwed up. Okay, I got it. Okay, got it. Okay, I got the point.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, look, this is a situation that, you know, we are trying to deal with both operationally as well as down in Washington. I think, you know, I would agree with Helena's assessment, which says that it's a pretty tough hill to climb in terms of changing some of the stuff. But I think we're going to continue to try. And Howard and Helena have both been down at least twice since I've been here doing this with Chris. You know, the other part that we also need to keep our eye on is if we go forward with this, we need to look at that set of risks that, you know, John put up, which I think are very real, and make sure that to the best of our ability, we have a program that mitigates those risks. Because you could easily see a program that we look at today is $750 million, and it would be more expensive than that and have operational impacts. And I can't help but think that Mr. Sador is going to ask for the PTC asterisk when he gives his report on operational performance at Metro North. But we're going to try and avoid that if we can. So anyway, thank you. That was I think an excellent report. Not an excellent topic, but an excellent report. Thank you. I think the next item on the agenda is the update from the independent engineer, McKissick. And Mike, are you doing this one?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
I'm all ready. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In your handout package today, there is a one-page sheet. If you could just follow along on that. That's a summary of our recommendations from the 33 project reports that we did this month covering Long Island Railroad and Metro North. This is a one-page flash summary, if you will. It includes the issue. Okay, sure. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, the flash summary includes the issue, the impact, our recommendation, agency action, and certain metrics. Today there is one issue that warrants discussion, and that's issue number 3, the highlighted issue under the Long Island Railroad's Strategic Track Enhancement Program. And our recommendation is that the Long Island Railroad develop a master plan for force account utilization over the next 7 years. The reason for that is during this period, there are numerous key projects that will rely heavily on the availability and usage of Long Island Railroad in-house labor. Those projects include improvements to Jamaica interlocking, east side access, the potential for PTC, other capital plan projects, as well as maintenance, their ongoing maintenance program. This master plan should include individual project schedules, their needs by labor category, such as signal, track, traction power, flagging, etc. This should identify what the current force account resources are, what the expected attrition should be in those categories, all leading to whether and how the work in support of these projects can be accomplished, and that being with current force account resources, or whether, as is expected, new hires would be required, and if so, when those new hires would need to take place and in which labor category. We're recommending that this be developed by April of this year so that it ties in with the approval of the 2010 to 14 capital plan, as well as the Long Island Summer hiring program. The availability of force account resources will have a significant impact on their ability to support these critical projects, and this plan is needed in order to demonstrate their ability to do so. Are there any questions? Okay. That concludes my report. Thank you.
The development of this plan, Al, is this something that Long Island Railroad agrees with and it will be proceeding on, or?
We agree with the concept. I think the level of specificity is something we have to look at to the extent that detailed schedules are required out 7 years until some of the projects are more mature. You're not going to have those type of schedules. So I think we agree. We already have started things like that, given all the needs that Eastside Access has. So we just have to work out with the independent engineer exactly the level of specificity they're talking about with respect to schedules.
Thank you. And again, I think, and I appreciate Mike's help to do this, I think the idea of this report and boiling it down and focusing is all, again, about trying to use our time as effectively as possible and allow the independent engineer to really focus their attention and our attention on the critical items that are there. So this is, I'm sure we'll continue to refine, but I think it's a very positive step in the right direction to be able to do that. So thank you. The last item I think we have on the agenda today is a discussion of the MTA Small Business Mentoring Program. This is a joint effort that has been undertaken both by our Office of Construction Oversight and by Michael Garner in our diversity area. And I think we cannot be satisfied, let's just say it like this, we cannot be satisfied with our performance as it stands right now in terms of achieving our MWBE goals. I think the blunt way is probably the best way to say it. We shouldn't be satisfied. We've been working for some time, it predates me, although I've been working with Michael and Ron on various steps that we can take to be able to try to address this. This program is one step. It is focused on small businesses, although many small businesses, in fact, fit our definition of minority and women-owned business enterprises as well, so that there's an opportunity to be able to do that. And we thought that it would be worth having a little bit of a discussion here, just so that we're all aware of that we're trying to take a very aggressive stand on it, and I barely see a legislator without mentioning that we need the statutory basis of being able to do this. But are you doing it, Michael, or Ron? Who's speaking?
I'm first, Ron,
okay.
Second.
All yours.
Thank you, Jay. Let me also just thank Jay also for setting the tone with getting this program set in place, because if there's going to be effective change starts from the top. And Jay, in a short period of time that he's been here, he's made it known to his senior staff that he wants this program up and operating, and thank you. I also want to thank Susan and the board, and Ron Saporita and his staff for doing a great job in assisting our office in getting this program up, started, and operating. Let me say that the goal of this program is to assist the MTA in building a diverse, larger pool of qualified contractors who can assist us in building our projects safely, timely, and on budget. And we wanted to drill down and deal with the core issues that stop firms from entering the marketplace because of the inherent industry impediments, such as lack of access to bonding, lack of access to capital, training, and then basically training contractors how to do work the MTA's way. And so we want to train contractors how to bid, how to manage their subcontractors, how to order their long lead items, and basically give them the tools that's necessary for them to build larger projects for the MTA. We also want to link the program up with a loan program, whereas the MTA will issue two-party checks until the loan is paid off. So we're going to help them build those kind of relationships with not only getting capital, but getting bonding and insurance, part of the rising cost of insurance, we wanted to mitigate that by having our OSIP firm basically wrap up all of the subcontractors or contractors on our sites. Next. Okay. Let me also just break down the actual program. It's going to be a 4-year term in which we will assist contractors doing work in this program with helping them build themselves up so we can navigate them and usher them into the mainstream. And so all of our projects under $1 million would in fact be put in a pool for all of our small contractors to bid on and to grow on. We will also have mandatory training in which if the mentor CM firm that is charged with ensuring that these projects are finished safely, timely, and on budget, and to mentor these firms, if there are areas in which they are weak, we will mandate training. If the firm does not take training, they can't bid in the program. And let's be clear about this. This is not some social program. It is a program that is going to focus on helping smaller firms build up their resources so they can finish our projects safely, timely, and on budget. And they're going to be held to every standard that any other contractor doing work for us would be held to. We are going to waive bonding, but we know that waiving bonding in the long term is not a great thing. So we have outlined a bond program with Marsh, whereas we will work with these firms in their first 4 years in helping them get bonding when they graduate out. Also, the loan program in which we will help them get loans, and we will issue two-party checks until the loan is paid off. And so the goal basically here is to, after the 4-year period, is to graduate these firms out with all of the resources that they need in order for them to enter the open marketplace. Also, the grad program, there will be contracts from $1 million to $3 million in which we will require these firms to have bonding. And basically, if they want to join the building trades, we will assist them in joining the building trades as well. Next. So, we will issue an RFP for CMs this month, whereas we will hire a CM firm who will assist us in ensuring that all the projects in this program is finished safely, timely, and on budget. And if necessary, these CM firms will also mentor the firms in the program. And the actual model is in place already at the SCA, where now they are issuing the actual awards in the program over $100 million a year. So it is a sound model. Next.
Thank you, Michael. So all it is basically requires a new way of doing business at the MTA. The proposed legislation, which is well supported.
Excuse me, Ron. Could I ask a quick question before we go any further? Mm-hmm. On the bonding issue, you're going to look for a regular CM, a person in construction, to be like the person who would take another company and try to show them the ropes, for lack of a better term. And the bond, would that be procured by the CM?
No.
Or it's going to be procured by that contractor? But who's going to help guarantee the bond? I mean, the bonding company normally wants somebody to put assets up or some sort of security, so they can recoup if there is a problem. Would the MTA be the person to back that bond for themselves? It sounds kind of...
In the first 4 years of the program, we are going to waive bonding.
Waive it, okay.
Waive bonding.
Okay.
But, okay.
Yes, in fact, Commissioner Wartendijk, that's the first item. The legislation, obviously, you're absolutely right. Right now, 137A requires us to get payment bonds. So one of the requests in the legislation is to waive that a state finance law requirement. We'll also looking to provide OSIPs. We have OSIP on most of our transit-related facilities. We do not have OSIP on bridges and tunnels nor bus facilities.
For those of us who are not contractors,
I'm sorry.
OSIP is?
Owner-controlled insurance program. I apologize.
Oh, okay.
Yes, thank you. All right. So we're broadening the legislation to allow us to cover all the projects in this program, which will be cross-agency projects. We do not have ability to pre-qualify contractors at this point, so we'll be seeking the ability to pre-qualify, as does the School Construction Authority. And we will be setting aside a certain amount of money for projects and designated projects in the program. This all requires legislation. Small projects are a challenge for the MTA. We like to package things into larger projects to minimize coordination and things of that nature, minimize our own staff interface. However, we need smaller projects in order to establish a program. We need a lot of projects in order to establish a program. 10 projects doesn't make a program. So we're setting an average of $250,000 type projects. So the first year, we'll get to that first year. $10 million required. Legislation requires us to award $10 million in construction contracts, so that's about 40 projects, doing the math. Organizational changes. Michael mentioned the obstacles there. To overcome those obstacles, we'll need certain things, like for prompt payment, to make sure we pay on time. An impress account or some other mechanism in-house here. We're looking at an impress account, which is what is done at the School Construction Authority with that contractor we talk about has the ability to make payments after the payments are approved by the MTA. The risk fund that you just mentioned, also the bond escrow, we will be taking the risk for those contractors in the pool. Based on the information from the School Construction Authority, we think it's a minor risk, and we're setting aside $1 million for the risk fund. And a loan program, of course, that will be required in order to, as I said, $10 million, the legislation requires that. It's a 20-year legislation. 10-year legislation, and with the cap of $100 million per year. We'll be instituting we have already begun to institute a small business training program. We've identified five core courses and have gone through them once, and we'll be repeating them and adding other courses, training focused on small business needs. And finally, the programmatic costs for this will be borne by the agency's capital program. We will begin the program using the 2005 to 9 capital program funds. So timing. We'll be continuing the training program we talked about. We'll be advertising the CMRFP, as Michael mentioned. This week we'll go on the street. We're in the process of developing a request for qualifications process. We have not done that in the past. That's something new. So we're working with all the agencies to develop that process. And we expect the legislation to be signed in February. We will then move the next needed critical path item, which is the loan program, request for qualifications. And then we hope to award the CM contract in April. If we can do that, that'll give the CM a month to work with the agencies, be familiar with the projects, get all the details together. At the same time, it'll allow us to begin to put together the pool of members that are small bidders that will be in the program, and allow us to go out on the street sometime in May or June. And so I said, the legislation requires $10 million in the first year. That's our goal. When the gun goes off, we need to be ready.
Susan, anything you want to add to this?
Just a couple of points. One is that many of these things that we're proposing actually were discussed at the Blue Ribbon panel for construction excellence. And what happened there was certain problems, certain blockages were identified. When Michael came to us, he was already familiar with this program, having developed it before he was with us. So we're modeling off of a successful program. We expect it's going to change because we're a different agency and we're a much bigger agency. but this is a good way to start it. And lastly, I'd like to point out that there has been tremendous interest in the small business and minority community for this. I can't tell you how many people have said, when's this going to start? Can you do it at the MTA? Today in capital construction, we heard how dividing some of our contracts into smaller bites did result in more competition. And in the long run, what we're hoping is not only to help us meet our minority goals, but that we actually develop more contractors, more bidders, and in the long run, it'll save us a lot of money. So for me, this is a real win-win. What the board members can do is call your elected officials and say, pass this legislation. It's been sitting up there a long time.
Yeah, it's passed the Assembly, right? It's the Senate where it has not passed. And it's actually sponsored by John Sampson. So we will, every time I've spoken to the majority leader, I've made the point of saying it would be very helpful to get this. I would add a couple of other things. I mean, one of the things that struck me as I've been going around and talking to people is the number of people who said, I just simply can't figure out how to work with your organization. You know, navigating our process, I mean, is you know, I think Michael and Ron point out, you know, what we're trying to do right here is teach you the MTA way. We may want to change the MTA way over time. We may make the MTA way easier over time, but this is actually coming the other way. It's actually saying, for the moment, the MTA way is the MTA way, and we need to find a way to get you into that and do that. And every single time I go out and speak to people, people make that comment. And often, you know, women in minority-owned businesses, you know, are the people who are telling me that. So it really is an opportunity to do it. The other point that I know that Ron and Michael are taking on that we talked about in our internal discussion, we may be able to piggyback on some of the things that the School Construction Authority has already done. We don't necessarily, for example, have to have our own loan program. We might be able to work right off the back of the loan program that they have already with the financial institution. You know, we don't know the answers to that, but you know, saying it wasn't invented here is not the way we're approaching this. We're trying to piggyback as much as we can. And I think really the point to underscore, which I think has already been made, the idea here is that, you know, on whatever date that legislation is passed and signed into law, we should be able to run, not at that point that we're in a position of saying, okay, well, now we have multiple other steps that we need to do. And I think everything here is designed to put us in that position. Obviously, on this and 742 other topics, we can't control what happens in Albany, but we'll do our best to be able to work with it once the actions take place. And I haven't actually heard of anyone saying they don't want this to happen. So I mean, I am actually guardedly optimistic that it will work its way and become ripe in the legislative process.
Can I ask a question? I'm sorry, Doreen, do you want to go? Can I ask a question on pre-qualification?
Yes.
My understanding, and that doesn't make it right, it just makes it my understanding, is that various agencies pre-qualify companies so that they can bid.
FDSCA's bid and work.
DOT also does that.
Okay.
So DOT being a state agency, which I know pre-qualifies smaller businesses, whether minority or not,
right,
for the ability to bid on DOT contracts, do we accept their pre-qualification so that a company that is already pre-qualified with one state agency would automatically be pre-qualified with another state agency?
We've not thought about it in that way. Each agency, as you know, is different. Yes. Yeah.
No, it's
a good thought.
Right, because obviously there are companies that have gone through whatever process, DOT or the Thruway Authority or other, the Dormitory Authority, other state agencies have been involved in this for a longer period of time. Doesn't mean they're doing it right, just means they're doing it longer.
Right.
And it would seem that the less number of pre-qualifications you put a company through, the better it is. And somebody made a decision that XYZ company is appropriate to do DOT work or Thruway Authority work, so therefore one would assume that they would be appropriate to do MTA work.
Right.
I'm not saying that that's guaranteed, but one could assume that that would be the same focal point.
Right, that's a great thought.
So
And-
let's look into it, because I
Yeah.
think it is, again, it's consistent with this idea that let's give everybody the benefit of the doubt on
Right.
this and try to do it. So, I mean, I think let's just take a look at it.
Okay.
I note that my firm, which is a WBE, is qualified by the state DOT, which has made it easier for me to qualify as a WBE in other jurisdictions. It just reduces the bureaucracy and the paperwork. So it would be great if we could do that. Are there a lot of CM firms in the business of providing this kind of mentoring advice?
Yes, they are.
So we expect to see several bidders for
Yes.
this. Great.
Yes.
And those CM firms have been identified so that they can receive like bid packages when this thing
Yes, they have.
gets.
In fact, we've gone out to the broader community, CM, construction firms, minority firms. Hopefully, they'll partner up, joint venture and things of that nature. So we've got a
And they could really,
pretty
if they
substantial
could
list.
partner up with a regular construction firm that wouldn't necessarily have to be a minority CM firm.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Could grab a minority one and partner.
Yes.
That's correct.
Right.
We have
That's correct.
goals established.
That opens more doors.
Correct.
Right.
Okay. We are also, by the way, I mean, Michael and I are meeting later this week with some of the largest minority women-owned suppliers to the MTA, our current suppliers, really to engage with that community a little more. So, I mean, this is not just one. This is just one plank of a multi-pronged effort to try to deal with a place where, we really need to show impact. I mean, you can't keep going year after year and say our intentions are in the right place, but we don't make the numbers work. At some point, the numbers speak, and we have to be able to figure out what it is that's going to make that happen.
Marketing and publicity of the program?
Yes, and also making sure that the goals that we are setting with our large contractors, that those goals are being achieved.
Okay. Because obviously there are lots of companies that, for whatever reason, have never thought about doing business with MTA, for whatever reason, and obviously we want them to change their mind.
Exactly.
It's good for them and it's good for MTA, as Susan clearly pointed out. And the more of that information we can get out, especially through the local chambers or through the contractors associations, be it on Long Island or the Hudson Valley or wherever it is, would obviously be very beneficial on those things. Because one would assume that a smaller company, for a smaller bid, would do business in the locality where they are located.
Right.
I don't see a company from Riverhead doing business in Staten Island, not because it's not a good idea, but because the travel obviously costs money from that perspective. So,
Especially without the
that's
train.
right.
that
We
we
have
won't
to
have
pay the
anymore.
toll. After we take the toll off, but that obviously they're more likely to do business in the area they know with the agency they know in that context. So the more marketing of that we can do, obviously the better that is also in that regard.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Yeah, and actually, Michael and Susan and several other people organized a terrific program earlier this year, or late last year, with McGraw-Hill, where I don't know how many, it was a full auditorium. It was quite a
300 plus.
Yeah, I mean, it really was terrific. I mean, I spoke for a few minutes, but it was really organized by other people, and it was going to exactly what you were talking about. But I don't think we can stop there. I mean, I had the same thought the other night attending the annual dinner for WTS, with whether or not we were working enough with that type of forum to be, because several people came up to me in that forum and said, we really want to be working with the MTA. Right. And sadly, they often point out they're working with many other transportation places, and the one that they can't crack is the MTA. And we just have to work our way through that in every step of it.
Good.
So, okay. Thank you very much. I think I am slightly over time. But anything else, or should we entertain a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Thank you very much, and I will see you all on Wednesday. Right?